Aloha. You are now entering behind the scenes and beyond the talk with Ted-x Honolulu. I'm your co-host, Justine Espiritu, and this is my co-host, Jennifer Killinger.
Aloha, I'm Jennifer Killinger, and this series has been speaking with different volunteers, coordinators, and organizers of Ted-x Honolulu. And today we have our first speaker in the studio to discuss his idea worth spreading, and Justine will introduce him to us.
So today we have Steven Chiang, who is the director of the Agribusiness Incubator Program, as well as the director of Go Farm Hawaii.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so as we said, we're really excited because you're our first speaker. And in this series, we kind of talked about there's a lot of different roles and people that go into Ted-x Honolulu, but this series is also, in terms of the speakers, it's another opportunity to give you guys a forum to get more in depth about your idea and just kind of share with the rest of the community what it's like to be a part of it. So we want to start with kind of the background of your familiarity with TED Talks, the national and international platform, and then the Ted-x Honolulu. So if you could kind of share your introduction to TED.
Well, I have a memory. This was pre-kids, so it's at least 12 years ago. I was lying in bed. I had my laptop, which I know you're not supposed to look at screens just before you go to sleep, but I somehow discovered TED Talks. And I was so stoked at all the great content. I would sort by inspiring or filter by whatever filters they had on there. And I would just find just great stuff, one after another. And I was so excited to share it with my wife and got her hooked into TED Talks too. And so, there's a period where I would watch TED Talks on a really regular basis. And then, like I said, that was pre-kids. Mm-hmm. So then kids happened, and then less time for that. So by the time the TEDx opportunity came around, I was very, very familiar with TED and very impressed.
What was your first TED Talk that you can remember, or the one that maybe stuck out the most in your mind?
That's tough. I'll tell you some of the breadth, and this was so impressive. I mean, there were like dance performances that, just like so moving and mesmerizing. Mm-hmm. And then there's talks about how the human brain works, and there's talks about, more sociological things. So, one that's popular and just comes to mind for no particular reason is this, some Norwegian economics professor. I'm sure I have it wrong. But you know how he shows the bubbles and they grow and move on his charts?
The bubbles?
I have no idea.
Give
us a little more information.
He shows these charts of economic data, and he runs it through a time series. So you see the data actually move. So there's a sense of change across time.
But the way that he shows it is in a way that helps you to visualize how it's changing rather than just looking at a simple graph.
Right, so he's got this, again, I'm not sure if it's correct, but it's this Norwegian accent. It's all very cute. He's kind of this old guy. And he's showing this just really profound data that helps you understand like how the world has changed. Mm-hmm. And at least a couple of his examples, it was how it's changed in ways that are non-intuitive, right? Like birth rates in Africa, death rate, this sort of thing. So, just a lot of really, not only inspiring, but things that really make you think. Mm-hmm. And I know they're sharing, but what I took from it is when it did really interest me, I wanted to share what they had shared with me.
You wanted to share that with others?
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd copy the URL and I'd send it to somebody. Hey, check this out.
So it immediately started inspiring you to start making change in your own circle.
Right. As far as changing the physical world, I'm not sure, but at least
spreading ideas.
Right, exactly.
And then, so were you familiar with Ted-x Honolulu then, that we had this in our community?
A little bit. I think TEDx Maui. Uh-huh. I don't know if that was something that happened pre-TEDx Honolulu. I'm not sure the history of it, mm-hmm. but but I remember hearing that TEDx was in Hawaii somewhere, and yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. But
And
I had not attended one yet.
Okay, you haven't attended one.
What was your first TEDx event that you attended?
This one.
Oh, this one was the one
I mean,
that you
the
spoke
one that I
in.
spoke at, yeah.
Wonderful.
So again, what I like about TEDx is, bringing that platform to your own community, and they have TEDx all over the world. And so how does it feel that you, out of over 100 applicants, this theme, our last event was in March, and the theme was paradigm shift, and you were chosen as one of 12 experts or leaders in Honolulu to take that stage.
Right. I mean, to be honest, it felt like I'm not worthy, right? because I had been so impressed by the TED Talks I've seen, I really put speaking at a TED event on a very high pedestal. And so, initially I was not thinking that I would apply, and then eventually I did. And the process is, and you've probably heard this on previous shows, or your viewers have, but the process is they go through like an audition. And I thought I bombed that audition because I timed it at whatever time it was supposed to be, and I got through maybe a half or a third of what I really wanted to say. But again, I don't put it on me, but as far as the idea, I guess, was compelling enough that I was chosen. So yeah, really, I guess honored, but also very intimidated.
Can you talk a little bit about, were you surprised even then that agriculture was selected as a topic for paradigm shift?
Yeah,
for your industry.
I guess because when you're working on something and you're deeply involved in it, you don't necessarily view what you're doing as a paradigm shift. Although when you step back and look at it in a context of maybe what else has been going on, then you sort of have a greater appreciation for not what I've done, but what has been done with these programs. And so, yeah, I am proud of what we've accomplished. I had trouble thinking of it in terms of a paradigm shift. As far as the topic of agriculture, 10 years ago, yes. Today, I mean, like I said in my presentation, ag is very sexy, right? So there's tremendous interest in ag, and the interest, the interest spans everything from social impacts to the food itself, right? I mean, people, my perception is they're just more into food, and all the way to all the social impacts with the, who's behind the food,
I mean, it's definitely a very
technology,
loaded
everything,
issue
right,
of so many elements.
Right.
When I was in grad school and kind of just generally studying sustainability, I kind of looked at, well, what am I going to focus on? And to me, food, the more I learned and talked to folks, food was just that central element. And so I'm so glad to see that, that was really represented. And I think we do need to focus on that in terms of paradigm shift. I think it's so central.
Yeah.
So that was super exciting.
Yeah, it is something especially that younger people are getting more involved in these days. Everybody's really concerned about a lot of the different aspects that go into producing our food and what's in it and how and where it's produced. And all of those things come into play with the general consensus of young people nowadays. And I don't know if it's been that way for a very long time where, at some point we knew where our food was coming from. And now it's at a point where we don't know where this is coming from, but we want to. So you're kind of that bridge between there is bringing it back to, okay, now we can know where our food comes from.
Right, and that's not even the prime objective of the program, right?
Yeah.
But observationally, at least, my disclaimer is these are all my own opinions, right? But, there has never in the history of the world, as far as I know, been as much this kind of interest in agriculture, right? There have been more people doing agriculture, but there's never been this level of interest in it. The only other parallel we kind of saw was back in, let's say, the late 60s, early 70s. There was a back to land movement amongst the hippies, I guess. But talking to some of the folks that actually went through that period, they said, no, it's totally different now. Because before, they were like really fringe. They were considered really fringe, and it was more about, not about the food or about the agriculture itself, it's just kind of a lifestyle move.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I mean, there's
It's
widespread
more
support,
mainstream.
right?
Well, there's your paradigm shift right there. I don't know what you're talking
There you
about.
go.
It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, what about that surprises you in terms of a paradigm shift?
Yeah, just again, I'm so involved in the day-to-day, I don't have that perspective of stepping back.
Well,
Yeah.
which has been so cool. I'm so glad
Yeah.
you're able to be on that stage and be selected to kind of
Right.
recognize that the work you're doing is super meaningful in the community, and as for all the other speakers as well. So I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that diversity of the speakers and sharing the stage. What were some of the other speakers' topics that you were like, wow, where did that come from? Or like, yeah, this totally makes sense to be talking about, that our community should be talking about if we're thinking about paradigm
Right.
shift.
I mean, you're definitely right. The diversity was, I can't even describe the diversity because it didn't just, the diversity wasn't just across the spectrum this way, it went sideways and this way too, I mean, from Hayden was a speaker just before me, just before I was.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah, and he, when I first heard of his topic, I thought, well, they've been generating electricity with bikes. It's not like a new technology. The paradigm shift there was, it's not about the electrical generation of your action. It's about the mind shift, right? And so then I thought, wow, that's kind of profound, and I get it. From that to, human sexuality and our prejudices or constraints of ways of thinking about that, to, what they're doing with all the bizarro science fiction technology, with OceanEd and so forth, and how they foster that creativity. I mean, it's so across the map, I couldn't even have made a map of that diversity beforehand.
And it's like we wouldn't have known. And one of the things we've talked about is, you go to conferences or presentations and it's usually focused on one topic, like
Right.
energy or
Right.
food.
Right.
And to have TEDx where it's like all those different topics are taking the stage one after the other,
Right.
and one, just being able to see that diversity of leaders and idea thinkers that
Yeah.
all are coming from Honolulu or
Right.
Hawaii is pretty amazing. And you're like, wow, being a part of this community is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I like TED things in general is it's really stimulating, right? So if you go to a TEDx event, you're not going there to learn X, right? You're just going there to expand your horizons and learn, and be inspired and so forth. And definitely the diversity is, you can't help it. I mean, there's no one in that audience that knew about all these things.
Yeah.
And like you were mentioning how in your own little bubble of your world, what you do is just so commonplace, so every day that it's like, well, how is this a paradigm shift? Each person thinks the same way. Each person is so enwrapped with their own ideas that when they share them, they, to you or to me or to the audience members, it's such an eye-opening experience.
Right.
And so it's even a paradigm shift in that way itself on a meta level to think, okay, well, I'm also expanding what I think about my own because I see it
good
as
point.
small, but when I see it through somebody else's eyes, maybe it can be bigger.
Cool.
point.
So we're going to take a quick break and then go a little more in depth into your talk and the program itself.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world. And we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Aloha and welcome back to Behind the Scenes and Beyond the Talk with Ted-x Honolulu. Today we're talking with Steven Chiang about turning the ag-curious into the ag-producer.
So if we want to take this opportunity, if you can kind of summarize your talk for those in the audience that didn't see it.
Yeah, so the basic points I made were that, you know, there's a great demand and interest in agriculture right now. Like I was mentioning, it's really unprecedented. You know, whether people want to go to farmers markets or they want to buy local or things like that. So there's all this interest, and a lot of that interest goes beyond the food into actually being interested in the production of food, right? The farming. And so for those of us who have been in the industry for a while, we look at all this interest and we look at the problem of the aging farmer, the fact that the number of beginning farmers has been declining year over year. And that begs the question, so how are we going to continue to get new farmers? Because we obviously need more people to farm. So we have this interest on one hand, we have this problem on the other hand. It would seem like we should be able to convert this interest into the farmers we need. And so I then talk about the Go Farm program, Go Farm Hawaii program, and you know what we do to help get folks who are interested, what we call the ag-curious, and turn them into actual farmers, which are ag producers, right? So it takes more than just training the technical skills. You know, I mean, first of all, I don't think people understand how many things you need to know to be a viable farmer, right? It's not just all the science. It's not just growing stuff. There's a huge difference between gardening and getting something to grow and doing it consistently in larger volumes and producing for market and then selling that.
Involving the economics, not just the sciences.
Right, so science, mechanics, accounting.
Right, yeah, running your own business
running your own
is a whole other beast.
I mean, typically a small farmer is his own business person too, right? So it's very complex.
Manure, an idea worth spreading. Tell us about this. Tell us about this picture.
So this is, you know, Go Farm through the interactive activity. Go Farm had a pretty high presence at the TEDx event. You had a lot of your team there to support. And so we have Rob Brecka and Pam. Again, you know, this, you know, not knowing, ag is such a relevant topic now and people are interested. And so it's great to have this forum of bringing that idea out into the community and getting folks to participate and think about it. And so we were able to bring the farmers to the event, and they had a booth and shared some stories. And, you know, like you're saying, this unprecedented interest of where the food's coming from, that idea of knowing who grows your food and getting to meet that person. And it is you guys are trying to cultivate kind of a new, trying to bring in that younger generation. And that's a pretty ambitious goal. You know, it's your business and farming is your industry, but to think of you like sitting in a room and being like, all right, we really have to shift this. You know, the tradition of farms being passed down in families, it's just, you just can't rely on that to happen. It's like this is a very strategic plan to be like, okay, how can we fix this? That's really bold and ambitious.
Yeah, and that's giving us a little too much credit. We did see that happening, right? We saw the opportunity, the problem and the opportunity. And part of the problem was that we didn't see programs or enough programs that took people all the way to being a farmer, right? Like I was saying, you can teach them how, but to expect that guy with that knowledge to go then make the commitment to transition from a job that pays them, you know, something regular per week to you know, being a farmer, which is incredibly risky and all this sort of thing. I mean, it takes more than just knowledge.
And in what ways do you work with, you have students in the program? Are they called students or
Yeah, we call them students. This is a non-credit program, so it's mostly
participants?
young adults. There's kind of two demographic humps, but these are folks, you know, most of them have jobs.
Which is an interesting point, because
Right.
was the program originally a Department of Labor program, or focused more on
Right.
workforce development,
Right.
more specifically than? Could you kind of explain that? Because
Right.
that seems like an evolution from the beginning of how the
Right.
program.
So we were lucky enough. So the idea for a program like Go Farm, a bunch of us had this idea. David Ranget at Windward Community College had a grant from the Department of Labor for workforce development, basically getting people job ready, getting people employed. Dave is the ag professor at Windward, and so he thought, you know, why don't we use these funds to do a program like this? And because farmers are employed, right? You don't want to train people to be farm workers, because that's not a high-paying job. But people will work for, you know, for whatever it takes if it's their own farm. So we wanted to create farmers, and so that's how it got kicked off. Yeah.
And so you've gone to places like the Capitol and incorporated your presence into these different
Yeah, again,
avenues.
what I've seen, what's great about Go Farm, you know,
Yeah.
having that presence at TEDx. You guys have also, you were at Ag Day at
Right,
the Capitol and
right.
had a presence there. And or I'm kind of wondering if, you know, we talk about all the things that farmers need to be aware of, the business skills. Where does, and talking specifically about Hawaii food issues, where does the policy fit into that? I'm stoked to see that you are bringing farmers there to the Capitol to be a part of that process,
Right.
because the farmers I know are so focused on the field.
Right.
You know,
I
how
mean,
do you get them?
It takes so much time. What's interesting is that most of the folks entering farming, right? So they're not coming from a farming background, but they're entering farming, and it's not. I would say this is almost 100% true. They're not, hey, I'd like to grow food and sell it and make money.
Yeah.
Right. That's not their motivation.
Yeah.
It's coming from, you know, sustainability, resiliency, concern about sources of food, interest in feeding communities. Right. So a lot of these sort of things. So they already have if you want to call it a social, community, political consciousness. So I think the new wave of farmers, it's going to be easier for them to get involved in those kind of issues, because I think
They already
they
care.
already care, right? You have other issues which are not social issues, but let's say agricultural issues, like regulations for cottage food industry or on-farm housing, and you know, these sorts of things, which are probably more directly impacting their livelihoods. And you know, so I think people who are active in the political process are active in the political process, right? So if it comes in through the social side and bleeds over to the more practical side, or vice versa, I see more involvement in the future rather than less.
Would you say that the participants in your groups with your organizations, do they usually go on to have smaller farms, medium, or large? And how does that come into play with the policy? Is it somebody
Right.
with a smaller farm is more likely to want to make these changes, or is it across the board?
Definitely on the smaller side. We've been around, coming on 3 years now, right? So in this long process, you know, getting land and capital to create a farm,
Especially in Hawaii.
especially in Hawaii, is not easy. So they're starting out, it's all going to be small acreage and so forth. What I have to remind some folks, because there is this unfortunate divide between, let's call them large and small farmers. I think what I have to remind people is the guys who are large didn't start off large typically, right? Unless they inherited something.
Right.
They all started off small. And so this is what we're creating. It's the beginnings. as far as, what was your question?
So you have established that it's usually the smaller farmers that come out of your
Right,
program
yes.
and they learn and they start
Right.
small. Do they care really strongly about the policy? Do they find reasons to be active in trying to
On the
establish?
social, community side, yes. Again, they went into farming because of these kinds of things, a lot of, most times. On the more systemic issues, like irrigation ditches and you know, these sorts of things that affect agriculture specifically, I haven't observed as much interest in that. I think it's when, you know, other people are taking care of that, the larger guys. They're going to be impacted more by that.
And the larger farms have more of the lobbyists and other large ways to make changes, and the little guys are kind of stuck with their own personal impacts.
I mean, I'm just guessing here, but
Yeah.
you know.
Since you come from the more business side background,
Right.
do you see your students that you say are coming into the program with like the more social consciousness? Are you ever like think they're kind of distracted by that, and you're like, hey guys, forget about like the backbone of running a business here, you know?
Distracted by the...
By like by the social issues,
Oh,
or
of course. I mean,
like
I
don't forget
yeah.
to do your bookkeeping.
I mean, even with third generation farmers, right? The reason the agribusiness incubator program exists is because we are the business consultants for agri. And, you know, we've had really actually good impacts, and, you know, a lot of that is simply by getting people to focus on the business part.
So how do you find these participants? Who comes to you, and then how do you get them involved?
For the Go Farm?
Yeah.
We have something called an agri-curous seminar. So we have it at Leeward Community College, Windward Community College, and Kauai Community College. They run about twice a year. And, you know, it's just like a 2-3 hour seminar, free to attend. People show up, and you know, we frame it that if you're interested in possibly farming, come to this event.
Okay, so it's very open-ended, and not much commitment needed to learn about it. And then
Right,
the ones that are
right.
really interested, they come back for more?
Right, so we talk about farming in Hawaii. It's also a chance for us to recruit. So we talk a lot about the program. And, you know, over time, every time we have a seminar, we seem to get heavier and heavier into, this is really hard, guys. Right?
Yeah, Jay and Nora have really been pushing
Yeah.
that, because the program has grown so much of the interest in it and the
Yeah.
applicants. And
Right.
like you said, well, this is the 5th cohort was just kind of selected.
Right,
and
right. It
it's-
just got started.
The interest is really growing, so they're trying to be like, this is really difficult, and it takes
Yeah.
a lot of time, just trying to impress that.
Yeah,
upon
because
people.
Because you don't want people to quit partially through, right?
right, I mean, the folks that do the best, there's a strong correlation between time they are able to put in and their level of success, and their willingness to work hard and so forth. So we really actually have kind of scared them away, but we have enough applicants because there's enough interest and enough people that think they can commit to that. And so through the agri-curous seminar, we then recruit, and they apply to our ag exposure, which is just like 3 days working on a farm.
One Saturday a week, or
Yeah,
there's only
three
one Saturday a week.
Saturdays. I'm just, yeah.
Yeah,
3
one every
Saturdays
weekend of a
or
month.
something like that, working on a farm, most recently with our existing students or our incubatees. And
Incubatees, I
Yes.
like that.
so they really, what we're trying to convey there is, hey, this is real farming, right? It's not just all romance and looking at butterflies and sunsets, right? Yeah.
So I have a question, because the program is so great with that business training and with like getting them on the path to get access themselves to land and starting their own business. And there has been a lot of interest, how do you look at or be conscious of the demographics of, say, you know, women versus men, as well as, you know, since land is so hard to get here in Hawaii, of, you know, local folks versus people, other folks?
So our selection is imperfect, as any kind of process like that is, but we do give priority to folks. Like this is it's not a scoring system per se, but if they do already have access to land, you know, we can probably pretty safely assume that if they go through the program, that they can convert our investment in them into actual food production, right? So
That they'll have what they need.
that counts for something. The demographics, it's really been, we've really been blind to the sex part. But what's interesting about that is when Go Farm first started, we saw maybe greater than 50% female, right? And so we're like, wow, great. And when we would share this little bit of information with folks, they, you know, when I say folks, I mean folks in like politics or funding agencies.
Okay.
You know, they would get excited about that too. But it's since shifted, but we don't have a ton of data points yet.
Well, that's great. I think that we'll come back and talk a little more about that in just a little bit. Thank you for tuning in. Tweet to us at ThinkTech High and let us know if you have any questions and we can answer them for you today. We'll be back after the break.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon. And on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Aloha, and welcome back to Behind the Scenes and Beyond the Talk with Ted-x Honolulu. I'm your co-host, Justine Espiritu. We have our co-host, Jennifer Killinger, and our guest today is Steven Chiang, the director of the UH Agribusiness Incubator Program and director of Go Farm Hawaii. So we kind of went over your presentation and the program itself. One thing I'm kind of curious about, you know, it's still a pretty new program, but what is something, how the students themselves that have come in, what have you kind of learned and maybe adapted the program based on what you've learned from them?
Quite a bit. You know, we were, in a sense, kind of making this up as we went along. Again, behind Go Farm Hawaii are a bunch of professionals from the University of Hawaii that have spent a lot of time with farmers. So we had a pretty good idea of what we wanted the students to learn. A couple examples of what we learned from the students. One is the importance of the cohort. You know, they go through training together, but that's just because it's you know, that's how you form a class, right? But the cohort, because the training is difficult, it's very demanding, we've come to learn that by being in a cohort, it actually gives them more resiliency, right? They get to kind of grumble to each other and celebrate with each other and support each other in all sorts of ways. So it's been great. And that extends beyond our formal training to when they're in the incubation stage and grading.
Now, can you tell me what the incubation stage is?
Right. So access to land is very tough, especially here in Hawaii. So our ag incubator is an opportunity for them to have access to land and shared equipment and facilities where they can start their own business and sort of transition, right? I mean, you can't go to a bank or to somebody who's leasing land and say, hey, I went through some classes and give me some land and money. So we expected that to be a hard sell. So the incubator is a chance for them to actually establish their business so that they can not only practice and hone their skills, but also be a more credible lessee or more credible person to
So you have the land
finance.
and the equipment, and you allow them to use parts of it in order to learn more about the realities.
Right, so they pay for the land, they buy their own supplies, they market their own stuff and receive the money for that. So it's legitimate businesses. You know, the part that makes it easier or is that sort of the transition is here's the land, right? Versus them having to find it and
yeah.
apply for that, and also access to machinery.
But it's still pretty huge. I mean, even though we're still there on the land with
Right.
you guys, it's still huge psychologically to be like, okay, you are independent now. Like, hopefully you've established your business. So another thing that I've noticed with the graduates, I'm a current ag incubator farmer, and it's been great that we've continued to work
Right.
together, even though we're officially out of the program, recognizing just that camaraderie and having that confidence in each other and wanting each other to succeed. One of the things that's come from that is some of the farmers are trying to start a co-op where we can, you know, continue to share resources and continue to share marketing, outreach efforts and things. And so how does that, to you, I mean, is that great for you? Like, wow, look at them organizing themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the success stories that I share with other folks is, you know, I said, you know, these guys are great. They're self-organizing, you know, they're starting their own co-op. They're producing so much, they outgrew our cooler. We have to go buy another one and they're gonna go build it. I mean, it's awesome to see.
So have you been impressed or surprised then?
Totally impressed. I mean, and it's been getting earlier and earlier. I know cohort 4, they were already starting to get very kind of creative in their marketing.
Oh, really?
Even while they're students. Right?
And you think a lot of that comes from having that community? It's like a little Ohana unit that is able to feed off of each other and build each other up?
Exactly. I mean, they can see what's ahead of them, right? Let's say the newer cohort can look at the ag incubatees and sort of see their future, right? It's not just, this is school. And
so there's a couple different locations for the Go Farm Hawaii.
Yeah, Leeward, Windward, and Kauai. You know, we get a lot of questions on when we're going to be on Maui, when we're going to be in Hawaii, but those things aren't free, and so you know.
Are you guys currently seeking more partners to help you expand to those islands?
Yeah, we're always looking for opportunities to do that, but we're lucky to have a platform. Like we have videos, we have a web platform. We're lucky to have that, so if we do expand, it makes it easier to do that. But, you know, it takes money and people, and so we're always looking, but...
Did the Ted-x Honolulu platform provide anything different for you than the other platforms you've already had?
As far as the program, I would say, you know, for people that know Ted, and there's quite a few, there's sort of instant credibility that comes along with that, you know, deserved or not, right? But, you know, so...
I'm sure it's deserved.
Yeah. So that's helped. That's helped.
How would you, so you've spoken in a number of other countries on farming or agribusiness.
Right.
And I was curious of the difference to you, you know, the honor of kind of, I think that's impressive to go to another country and speak on this topic versus, you know, what does it mean to speak to your own community about what you're doing? Can you kind of talk about that?
Well, a few differences is in the past when I've spoken in these other countries, it's been on the topic of agriculture. I'm speaking to people who understand that. Right, or agribusiness, and I that the TEDx audience. I mean, the experience was very different. One, because I didn't have to explain Hawaii, right?
Oh yeah.
But I had to kind of explain agriculture. So I couldn't assume that there was any particular level of understanding. But also the big difference was that it was, like I said, much more intimidating. Right? I'm not just preaching to the choir about and presenting information. I'm basically presenting an idea. I'm giving a speech, and you know that was very different.
And one cool thing you mentioned is this the first time your kids saw you talk about what you do, or have they been to your other presentations?
Probably. You know, I of course had to practice at home.
So they saw it a lot of times before they saw it on the stage.
Yeah, I'm very embarrassed to it's funny, I can be in front of an audience and I'm very calm. But just practicing feels very artificial. And
So I don't know if you've seen this picture of you and your kids, and it says they're being proud of their dad, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
Did they pedal on the bike at all at the
Did they
event?
pedal? I don't think they got to. There's a line for the
Oh yeah.
for the bike.
Yes, there was a line at the time. That's-
Yeah. So they wanted to eat whatever food was available, basically.
Yeah. Awesome. Well.
So on your talk on stage,
Yeah.
was there any particular thing that you didn't get to share there that you would like to share now?
Wow, a ton of things.
Since you had so
Because
much time up there, right? Was it?
Yeah,
How much did you have? 15 minutes or?
No, I had like 10 minutes. I think I would have spent more time if I had unlimited time, really talking about the change in the context of agriculture today, right? There's a lot of contentiousness, you know, whereas like the Catholics versus Protestants, the greatest wars there. And so in
Yeah.
agriculture, there's a lot of contentiousness, even though compared to other things, really there's more commonality there. I would have talked about how I would talk more about the new face of the farmer, right?
What is that?
Well,
Briefly.
we
We have
couldn't.
10 minutes remaining.
We can no longer depend on family farms being passed down, right? We're seeing that increasingly.
And that's a huge change
Right,
from
so-
traditional
So, because we do need new farmers, where are these folks coming from? And you know, there's a segment of the industry that looks at the socially community politically motivated people coming into farming, and kind of looks down on that because it's not simply about production, right? They say, well, they're not really serious, they're not really farmers. And I have to disagree simply because that's where the farmers are coming from. You can't, you know, you need farmers. They're coming with these motivations, embrace it, right? They're the ones that are going to be growing food for your grandchildren or your children. And so, yeah, I mean, even on the agribusiness incubator side, which is the business consulting program I have, you know, we really learn to just go where the people are, and
Right, rather than critiquing it or like wanting to like stick to the way it's always been, you know, you just kind of have to adapt. And
right, instead of helping only a segment of population, which let's say a more conventional farmer or one that might be considered more commercial, right? If we limited ourselves to that, we'd work with an increasingly or decreasing population of clients, right? So we're really trying to do all we can to promote agriculture, and this is where the new agriculture is coming from.
So how many people do graduate from your program per cohort?
I think at last count, we've trained 60. There's 30 some odd in training. So I guess that's the answer. We graduated
Wow.
about 60. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, great. Our time is up today, and thank you so much for taking this opportunity to get a little more in depth in your talk and join us.
Yeah, thanks for your interest.
Yeah.
I always like to talk about it.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you.